November 17th, 976 meeting of the North Carolina Board of Pharmacy. I'm going to first of all read the ethics statement in accordance with.
Hang on one second. Quick reminder: if you're not speaking, probably go ahead and mute. We're getting a lot of feedback over the lines. All right, Ashley, sorry about that.
No worries. Okay, I'll restart the ethics statement. In accordance with the State Government Ethics Act, it is the duty of every board member to avoid both conflicts of interest and appearance of conflicts. Does any board member have any known conflict of interest or appearance of conflict with respect to any matter coming before the board today? If so, please identify the conflict or appearance of conflict and refrain from any participation in the particular matter involved. All right. Sounds like Jay. Let's see. First of all, I guess we need to do the consideration of October meetings and November the 5th.
Right. That's right. So you guys have them there, and
I have a comment on the October meeting minutes in the section on potential board sponsorship of COVID vaccine CE.
Yep, got it. I'm looking at it.
All right, let's see. It's in the second paragraph.
Got it.
Third sentence. Campbell would be tasked to identify speakers. I'm sure that's Campbell University. So rather than a potential question about who's
not Campbell J.
Why don't we say Campbell University would be tasked with identifying speakers?
Got it. Happy to make that change.
And I saw another place that needed a period, but it was very minor.
I'll take a look, Bill. When I make this change, I'll go back through and look for that.
That's all I have on that.
Anybody else have any changes, questions? Oh, Andy, we can't hear you.
Motion to accept with Bill's edit there.
Okay, so there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, Wallace is seconding it. So all in favor, say aye. Bill?
Aye.
Keith?
Aye.
Wallace?
Aye.
Andy?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
And I as well. So the meeting minutes carry.
Very good. So, Madam President, the next item on the agenda, we have 2 requests for technician to pharmacist ratio increases. First from Express Care Pharmacy, and Kennedy Blunt is the pharmacist manager, and you probably see her there on your screen. And the second from GPS Pharmacy Solutions, and Julia Friedman is the pharmacist manager there. I think she's waving to the crowd. And both have requested or have applied for an increase of their tech to pharmacist ratio to go up to 5 to 1. Just to set the backdrop on this, to remind everybody, under North Carolina, under the North Carolina Pharmacy Practice Act, a pharmacist may not supervise more than 2 pharmacy technicians unless the pharmacist manager receives approval from the board. And the board may not allow a pharmacist to supervise more than 2 pharmacy technicians unless the additional technicians are certified. Of course, that's been the law for a long, long time. And by long-standing policy, the board has instructed board staff that a request for a 3 to 1 or 4 to 1 ratio increase may be allowed without formal board action, so long as the pharmacy shows it has sufficient certified technicians as required in the statute. And the board has directed that staff refer any request for a 5 to 1 or higher ratio to the full board for consideration. And so remember that under North Carolina law, there's no absolute upper limit on what the ratio would be, but rather it's up to you all to exercise your expertise and your public safety focus to determine whether a request would be appropriate and safe. So, Kennedy, we're going to start with yours. Express Care Pharmacy has applied for a 5 to 1 ratio. You guys have seen in your materials Kennedy's application, which lists all the employees and the like. Certainly staff will stipulate she has more than sufficient certified technicians to satisfy 5-to-1 ratio if it's granted. And Kennedy would like to, has put together a slide deck to go through her request. And Kennedy, I'm going to try to share that right now. And are y'all seeing it now?
No.
Oh Lord, I knew this would happen. Bear with me.
There we
See it
go.
now, Jay.
Here it is,
Got
Jay.
it. All right, perfect. I've got to adjust another window here. Make sure you guys can see it, or I can see it and change this. Oh, probably need to hit play, don't I? There we go.
Perfect. Thank you,
Everybody,
Jay.
all right. So I'm going to, Kennedy is going to use me to my highest and best use. She's going to tell me when to advance the slides, and that's what I will do. Take it away, Kennedy.
Thank you. First of all, thank you all very much for your time and service to North Carolina Board of Pharmacy. I appreciate being asked to present here today, and I wish I had changed my backdrop and included a beautiful picture of the Little Washington waterfront for you this morning, but instead it's just my office. So as Jay said, I'm applying to increase our pharmacist to tech ratio to 1-to-5 here at Express Care Pharmacy in Washington, North Carolina. Next slide, please, Jay. Express Care Pharmacy is a long-term care pharmacy. We were independently owned and operated from May 2008 till December 2016. We are currently owned and operated by their assisted living, senior living division, which is comprised of assisted living beds. We have 2 locations, Washington, North Carolina, where I'm located, the pharmacy and the corporate office. We serve 6250 beds located in North Carolina, Virginia, South Carolina, and Georgia. We have a second location in Leesburg, Virginia that services around 6,000 beds located in Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, and Pennsylvania. In July 2016, we applied for an increased ratio of 1-to-3. We feel that we're requesting the 1-to-5 increase at this time to accommodate our growing business and the need for packaging technicians to facilitate the high manual process that we have in long-term care pharmacy with data entry and drug packaging. We feel that this request would not create a public safety issue based on the quality control procedures and technologies we utilize, our compliance packaging, and the limited distractions we have in our quiet workplace as a closed-door pharmacy. Our pharmacists are focused on the task of prescription order and medication verification. We don't have the multitasking demands that many of our pharmacist colleagues have, including flu shot administration, counseling patients through drive-through windows, and multiple phone lines to answer. Next slide, please. Our technology that we use the QS1 pharmacy software system with the enabled workflow feature. And this allows each prescription to be tracked in work queues and verified by 2 pharmacists. One pharmacist reviews the written order and the other pharmacist reviews the packaged product. You can see there in the slide, the orders are keyed by data entry technicians, verified by the pharmacist, adjudicated by data entry technicians, filled by the packaging technicians, then verified and scanned by the pharmacist, and then scanned into the tote by our delivery clerk. We also utilize DocuTrack software, and basically this converts any of our faxed orders from prescriber's office or from the facilities into an electronic image. We also receive our electronic prescriptions through the software, and it's really great that we can make notes directly on the documents for inter-office communication, as well as communicating with the prescribers' offices or back to the facility. And then the electronic orders are attached to QS1 and to the pharmacy order for easily retrievable information if we have a question, obviously comes up with state audits and things. We also interface with multiple electronic medical records in our facilities. The examples there, we interface with AccuFlow, QuickMart, ElderMark, and Point-Click Care. And this just allows another layer of verification, real-time verification at the facility level. After the pharmacist verifies the prescription order, it goes into the EMR system and is reviewed there by the nursing staff. I also have a closed circuit real-time security camera right in front of me here that gives a bird's eye view of all areas of the pharmacy, so I can keep an eye on what's happening in the staff at all the times. I tell them that Big Brother is watching. Next slide, please. This is an example of our compliance packaging on the left. It shows on the pharmacy label there. Each label includes a unique barcode specific to the prescription number, the national drug code, tablet imprint code, in this case 797, and the tablet description are all printed on the label. On the right is an example of a QS1 screenshot that is showed to the pharmacist during the verification process. The pharmacist scans the barcode on the label, and this screenshot appears. The medication name, directions for use, product image, and a drug description are all included on the screen. Next slide, please. And these are my Powerhouse Fillers. We have 2 doses packaging machines. Each machine holds 60 drug canisters. They don't get sick, they don't call out of work, nor do they take vacation or accrue any overtime. So they work about 24 hours a day as long as they are well stocked and don't have a label jam or blister card. Each machine, as I said, holds 60 drug canisters. They're refilled and verified by a pharmacist utilizing barcode technology. So they scan the barcode on the canister to the manufactured barcode. Together, they fill and package over 12,000 prescriptions per month, which is about 25% of our total prescription volume. Next slide, please. So a typical work day here at Express Care in Washington is Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5:30. We fill about 2,300 prescriptions per day. That includes cycle fill and daily orders. We have 7 to 8 in-house pharmacists and 13 to 17 data entry techs and 13 to 18 packaging techs. And the range there is the upper range is if we were fully staffed. The lower limit indicates pretty much a normal day. On average, we have between 3 and 7 technicians off per day to accommodate working on Saturdays, call-outs, or paid time off. On Saturdays, we're open from 8:30 to 4:30. A little bit less prescription volume, about 400 per day. We have 2 pharmacists here, 4 data entry technicians, and 4 packaging technicians. Then Sunday and after hours, we have an on-call pharmacist and a certified data entry technician to answer phone calls. Total registered employees with the board are 12 pharmacists and 47 technicians, 18 of those being certified. Currently, our volume is about 45 to 50,000 prescriptions per month, with a less than 1 reportable error per month. Next slide, please. Here's a layout, and I hope you can see this. It's a little difficult to see, but oh, can you see my mouse there? I'm trying to highlight. This is a layout of our pharmacy. We have pharmacist workstations positioned both in the, thanks, Jay, both in the data entry department and of course the dispensing.
I didn't even know I could do that, Kennedy. So
you're really a good assistant. Thank you. But the pharmacists are located kind of in the dispensing area here, and then in the order entry department here. We have we have the order entry department kind of broken down into workflow teams, and we have a pharmacist assigned to each team So here, this is where I would be right here. This is my office here. But the packaging tables are here, medications here, then our toting area is in the back. Next slide, please. That's it.
I got enamored with the magnifying glass. Sorry about that.
Again, thank you for your time and your service to the Board of Pharmacy. We appreciate your time and listening to this consideration to increase our pharmacist to tech ratio to 1 to 5, and I'm happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Kennedy, I have a question.
Yes,
Do you
sir.
prepare sterile products?
We do not. We only service assisted living beds. So basically, most of our prescriptions are very similar to what you'd see in retail pharmacy.
Kennedy, this is Ashley. I have a question as well. On your
Sure.
doses packaging machine, does that put the pills into a bottle where then a technician would have to put those into a blister pack, or does that machine actually single blister? Okay, so that does that.
Yep, it labels, packs, seals, and presses the card for it, so it comes out ready to go. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank
Pretty
you.
slick.
They're awesome. When they work, they do a great job for sure.
So what's your current ratio?
Our current ratio, we're at we're inching up to 1 to 4. We have on most days 7 pharmacists here, and so with 26 technicians. So we're applying to 1 to 5 just in the event that obviously we're growing, thankfully, in the era of COVID, and in the event I have 2 pharmacists call out, or something happens and where we may not have all of our pharmacists here.
Okay.
Any other questions?
How many of?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Wallace.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was trying to get to my mic quick enough, but I was just curious about the number of certified techs that you use versus non-certified techs.
Right. The majority of our certified techs are in the data entry department. So they, are answering phone calls, communicating with the facilities, entering the orders. The ones that are non-certified do most of our packaging.
Okay. Kennedy, have you implemented the hazardous drug handling proposed standards?
We have, yes, sir. We have a hazardous drug section, and then we divide up the hazardous drugs and then are packaged in an area by one technician 2 or 3 times a day, depending on how many we have.
I guess what I'm struggling with is whether you really need an increase in your ratio. Mr. Campbell, if the average ratio is on any one day or over some period, when would Kennedy know if she's over?
I'm not sure I'm following. Let me take a stab at it. I mean, it would just be a matter, she has to keep track, as she does, clearly. She has to keep track of the number of pharmacists she has on duty at any given time and the number of techs. And so it's just an arithmetical calculation. I'm guessing the gist of the question.
Kennedy, it seems to me that you're doing this for an emergency purpose only. So the 1 to 5 would really be in a situation where you may have a pharmacist out or something to that nature. Is that correct, or is this going to be a daily kind of occurrence?
Well, both. So my upper limit is if I have all the technicians here and I'm one short pharmacist, I'm right at 1 to 5. So, the chances of that happening are, especially sometimes could be low, but there again, in the fall, 2 of my pharmacists have college age kids that we're moving to college the same day. So I had 2 pharmacists out, and the majority of my technicians here. So it just depends on staffing, really. But I'm trying to be sure we're adequately covered. In the event that we have 2 pharmacists off, we do have a consultant that can come in-house and work. But we just want to be sure we're within the guidelines.
Well, I think you're doing exactly what you need to do. You're doing preventive management, and you're planning for the planning ahead.
Thank you.
Did I understand you to be saying, though, that you do have someone in the event that 2 pharmacists be out, you do have an agency or a backup person that you can call?
Yes, we have a consultant pharmacist who is employed by Express Care Pharmacy. But, if she's doing out-of-state consulting and I have one pharmacist scheduled on vacation and another one calling sick, she's not necessarily able to get here. So we would have to run short on a day like that.
Well, if
Have
you're
you ever had
sorry, go ahead.
Have you ever had an opportunity where you have, because you were going to extend beyond that ratio, that you've had to send some technicians home?
That would be an option, but if, and I guess I could send them home with pay, but we really have the workload that I need everyone here every day. So I haven't had to do that.
Final question, what makes it prohibitive to hire additional pharmacists?
Financial reasons, really.
Good to see you.
You too.
One question. I mean, do you guys feel like you could adequately supervise 5 technicians per 1 pharmacist? I mean, do you have any reservations about that at all?
I don't. We, especially in the back, they're packaging the medications is almost like an assembly line. Obviously, what they're doing is drugs, and it takes a little more knowledge. But the pharmacists that are in the order entry department, we're constantly walking through the back. We're checking batch type cycles. We're checking totes. So, there's a lot of movement in-house, a lot of supervision where we're, constantly in the pharmacy, walking around, making sure everybody's in place, doing what they can. And, being sure that we're accessible if anyone has any questions. There are a gazillion different vitamins, that our patients are on, and, making sure that the right products are pulled and things, and that they're packaging the medications correctly. Good question.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think, Michelle, you're on mute.
I have another question. Thank you. Jay,
Sure.
If they're in a situation where periodically they run closer to this 5-to-1, are they in jeopardy of having the board come down on them?
Yeah, I mean, the enforcement approach is always one of common sense. I mean, stuff happens, right? I don't think staff's ever going to be interested in somebody had an emergency. Let's just give maybe put a little more concrete example. Let's say a pharmacy was approved for a 4-to-1 ratio, and they were fully staffed, and you had pharmacists that had an emergency and had to go home, and so for a day or half a day or whatever it was, they were above the ratio because of that emergency. I can't think of a single instance in 15 years in which board staff would have asserted that was any sort of violation of the law. I mean, technically for that time period, they would have been over their allowed ratio, but we do approach that with a common sense view. And I guess an analogy I might give for that, Michelle, is there's also a rule, as y'all know, that a pharmacist manager is required to work half the hours that a pharmacy is open, or 32 hours per week, whichever is less. But of course, there are the occasional week. I mean, a pharmacist manager gets to take vacation too, or some emergency thing comes up. And so we take a very similar approach there. I do appreciate absolutely that what Kennedy is doing, which is she's got the volume, and that she needs that kind of tech support constantly. And so I would say from a staff perspective that I'm very appreciative that Kennedy is being proactive on this.
And Michelle, that's basically the same thing I was trying to ask. But as pharmacists, we want to do the right thing. We don't like being on the edge of possibly violating a rule.
And Kennedy, one additional question. It just sounds like your pharmacists are mainly checking. They're not processing prescriptions through the QS1 software. They're just mainly making sure that the medication is being pulled right and that the medication is being packaged correctly, whatever unit dose it needs to be.
Yes.
Okay.
My pharmacists in the back, they don't answer phone calls. They're very minimally interrupted, only, by questions for the staff. So they're just packaging, checking packaging, and checking the product. And then the pharmacists that are doing the order entry, again, are only focused on that the orders are entered correctly.
I do have another question. What do you see the trends for your volume short term?
In response to COVID or?
Just period. Do you see, what has your trajectory been so far? I mean.
Well, I can tell you prior to COVID, we were taking on about a new facility every month, gaining, 100 to 200 beds. Since the spring, admissions are down, new openings of new facilities are down, but I'm hopeful that, as we're coming, don't misunderstand me, I don't want anyone to be sick, but we're coming into our busy time of year. And again, new business is coming on, so I anticipate our volume to continue to increase. Did that answer your question, Ms. Corbin? Thank you.
Yes.
Everybody's asked the questions that I would have asked, so I'm sorry to be silent here. Kennedy, thank you for your time today. My point would be by comparison, and that's how we do this with 5 to 1. This is not similar to some of the declinations that we've had from a standpoint of 5 to 1. We've had some folks that have come to us and we've said no, and not to name any particular company. But it sounds like to me from the information you've given us that your pharmacists are involved in very specific activities as opposed to some other types of setups where the pharmacist could be doing anything from order entry to, vaccinations to whatever. And so this is different compared to some of the things that we've declined. And so I'm sure the board members have ascertained that, but just to be clear, I think we have a situation that I could support from a standpoint of a request for 5 to 1. Thank you, Kennedy. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay. Do any other board members have any other questions?
No, I'm good with the discussion. I don't have any specific questions. I think anything that was on my mind's pretty much been answered.
So do we want to take a vote on this, board members? Or would we like, okay, is everyone good? Or would you like to basically?
Right.
Yeah, okay, if that's great. All right, do we have a motion?
I'll make
All right, so
we approve this.
I'll second.
Yeah,
All right,
Ashley,
so
I'm going to read that as a motion from Bill and a second from Keith.
Yeah. So this is to approve the pharmacy ratio request for 5 to 1. We have a motion and a second. So all in favor, Michelle? Oh, I'm sorry, you're on,
You're on
mute, Michelle.
She's got reflexes that are cat-like.
Okay.
There you go.
I'm sorry about that. This is the motion to approve it or to approve
Yes.
the 5 to 1 ratio.
Yes, this would be the motion to approve the technician ratio to increase from 5 to 1.
So motion made by Bill, second by Keith, and it's open for any further discussion if there is any.
I'll just, Kennedy,
Yes, ma'am.
I'll just give you a short little background. I'm the public member, so I don't practice pharmacy on a regular basis. But I can honestly tell you in the back of my head right now is my dad, who was a pharmacist, and he really had lots of concerns about the increase, and often talked to me about the concerns about monitoring a registered pharmacist monitoring a larger number of people. So I will be honest, that's where my hesitation is coming from, but I'm gonna vote yes.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, Wallace,
Aye.
Bill,
I think we're getting some sort of weird feedback. If everybody might want to check their mics. Sorry, Ashley.
all right, Andy,
Yes, aye.
Keith, you've already voted, right?
No, but I will. Yes.
I'm going around my little square here, so I'm sorry if I missed you.
It's,
All right, and
the
I'll
Brady
vote-
Bunch thing is hard to do.
Yeah.
Man. It's very hard to
So
do.
I vote as well that we should increase the technician ratio. So Kennedy, it looks like the motion passes and your request has been approved.
Wonderful.
Thank you for your presentation today.
Yes, thank you all very much.
And Kennedy, I will go in after the meeting today into the online application and indicate that approval. So you'll get a ping back probably later this afternoon from the ThoughtSpan licensing system showing that was approved.
All right, wonderful.
All right.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Kennedy.
Thank you.
Have a great day, Kennedy.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.
So our next request is from Julia Freeman. I see Julia there has been waiting patiently. And Julia, let me ask you, if you want me to, and this you may regret, I can try to share your document that you sent in too and scroll down as you direct me if you'd like me to do that.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, well, before you thank me, let's see if I manage to do it. What's that? Hang on, bear with me, Julia. Sorry. This is the no good deed goes unpunished here. So I'm trying to. Antoine, if you can hear me, I've got a PDF open, and that's what I'm trying to find. Sorry, Julia, I'm trying.
Let me make my way down there.
Yeah, Antoine, if you don't mind, because.
Okay, let me let someone in from the lobby and I'll come down.
Is everybody hanging on with bated breath there for the.
I don't know if it's baited. I did brush my teeth this morning.
Thank God.
Not that it matters in a virtual environment.
Are y'all, what are y'all seeing now? Are you seeing my screen as I'm
Yes.
scrolling?
Yeah.
through?
Yes.
Okay. Julie, by God, I may have gotten in here. Hang on.
There we go.
Hey, look at there. I got it. Antoine, I just did it through Firefox instead of through the PDF. All right, Julie, take it away.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time out to hear me talk this morning. And I really hope everyone has stayed safe and healthy during this time and, continue to stay safe and healthy. The picture, once it comes up, I'll kind of explain our little pharmacy to you.
Sorry, I think I screwed it up. Is it back now?
Yeah, it's back.
All right, sorry.
So I'm Julia Friedman. I own and operate GPS Pharmacy. We opened the pharmacy in 2016, so 4 years ago. And primarily we are hospice and compounding. So really it's hospice is kind of my heart and my soul. That's what I was doing in Atlanta. We were a premier pharmacy in Atlanta. We serviced almost all the hospices in Atlanta. We did 2,000 a day, and it was pure hospice. And I was the after hours emergency pharmacist who would come in, and I would work during the day, but I would also come in the middle of the night and fill these orders. And it's just such a service to the community. Most of the hospice patients, they don't have family members; they're in their home. And honestly, if it wasn't for us bringing the medications or the hospice nurse coming a couple of times, twice a week, they really wouldn't have anybody. So it is my heart. And so when we opened the pharmacy in 2016, the sole focus was hospice. And then compounding went hand in hand with that. So we do a lot of wound compounding. And so when we opened the pharmacy in Matthews, we did have a storefront. And so throughout the years, hospice does take quite some time to get a new account. It takes about a year to 2 to actually bring on a new account. So during that time, we focused on our compounding. So to the public, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, we're a compounding pharmacy, and we do primarily specialize in veterinary and hormone. Veterinary and hormone are really what we do. And then to the hospice world, we are 24 hours. So yes, we're there 8 to 5 taking hospice calls, but we're also 24 hours for them. We have one location. We have about 500 hospice patients right now. And then in terms of compounding, we do about 30 to 40 a day compounds. So it's quite substantial. That it's taken a lot of years, a lot of word of mouth to get to that point. And the nice thing about the pharmacy, as you can see, so this picture I took as like a pano shot. This was me standing at my station and kind of zooming around so you can see what my view is. So the middle door right there to the left, that's the door into the pharmacy. The pharmacy is essentially closed door. If you look by that window in the back to the left, that's our drop-off window. But we deliver to everybody. So we might get like 1 to 2 patients a day that walk in, and it's mostly our veterinary patients that like come and bring their little puppies in, or they just want to say hello. They just want to see us face to face. So very little, almost no walk-in. As soon as that patient comes in, we do have a ringer in place so we can hear them come in, and it rings so we know that they've come in. And then we go to greet them up there. But again, we're essentially considered a closed door. But it was really important for me to show you guys kind of what the pharmacy looks like, because for us, safety and security are really important. We're a small pharmacy. So essentially right now we do have a 1 to 4 ratio. We have at all times, we have a data entry. If you look at the first picture to the left, there's a computer section that's directly to the side of me. That's data entry number 1. Then if you look down my table back to that window in the back, right in the middle, that's data entry number 2. So those technicians, they sit in their sections the entire day. Essentially, we as a pharmacist, myself and Alex are the main pharmacists. We try to get the first phone call. So every phone call that comes in, we try to be that first phone call. We transcribe it down, and then it gets scanned in for data entry to type what we wrote down. So they stay in their sections. And if you scroll down a little bit, Mr. Campbell there. So this part of the table on the right.
And Julia, you call me Jay. Every time somebody says Mr. Campbell, I'm looking for my dad. So. Okay.
Okay. But this is the same table now to the right. This is where the fill technician is. So that technician fills right here, and it's in view the whole time. So now we have 3 technicians that we've covered. We have the 2 data entries, and then we have the fill technician. And if you look over to the right, and I've labeled it compound tech, that is where the compounding technician is. So they are always standing right there in that hood, and that's where they compound. And essentially how it works is myself as a pharmacist, the 2 datas, we pick up all the phone calls, we transcribe it down, we scan it in, data entry technicians type it in, it goes to the pharmacist to pre-check before a label comes out. Label comes out, the fill tech grabs the label, fills the medication, it goes to me or Alex to check it. When it comes to compounding, so the compounder, what they do, and this is all techniques from PCCA, we're PCCA certified, which is National Compounding Centers of America. Myself and one of my technicians did go to Texas to get trained by them. And so myself and that main tech are kind of the trainees if there's ever, like if a technician needs to come and help pour a troche, that we do the training there. But essentially it's one tech that does all the compounds. And what they do is they get the prescription, they pull it up. Pioneer tells them exactly what to weigh. So they pull the different drugs. So let's say they're making pimobendan chewies for a puppy. So they'll pull the pimobendan, they'll pull the chewy base, they'll pull the components, and they'll lay them out inside of the hood. And they print the formula that shows me what they've weighed. So I take that formula, I do the math to make sure the math is correct, and then I go in. The computer does all of our math for us, but we always check the main ingredient just in case, you know, someone went in and accidentally changed it. So we do the math, and then we go in and check the ingredients. Once we've checked the ingredients, we leave the formula there, and they know they can mix the ingredients. Once it's mixed, it goes back to us for a final check. So it is definitely a very small space, but it works really well like this. Essentially, this one table, from my history in hospice, a table like this can house about 1,000 hospice prescriptions. So in my old pharmacy, we did 2,000 a day. We only had 2 long tables, and we did 2,000 prescriptions. So we really are going to stay in this kind of model for a really, really long time. We're only doing about 150 to 200 a day. Of those, about 150 are hospice, which is traditional bottle filling. Occasionally we'll do a bubble pack by hand, very little. It's mostly bottle filling. And then the 40 to 50 a day is compounds. And right now we have a desperate need for a 5th technician to do our bagging and routing. So what makes our pharmacy so hard compared to like working, you know, like my history. Oh, let me show you the control closet real quick. So this is a view of the control closet. We do have our C2s. And Jay, if you scroll down more, you'll see a zoom in shot of it. We do have our C2s and 3 through 5s in that closet. They are separated out. The C2s are at the top, 3 through 5s are at the bottom. The closet is always in view of us, and we have a distinct line where a technician cannot cross that line just because cameras catch, you know, they can see everything as long as you stay behind that line. So everything is camera monitored, and it's secure in that closet right next to us. Now, I will say we do a lot of controls. I mean, we're primarily hospice, so all of our fills compared to a traditional pharmacy is going to be control. Most of them are going to be control fills. So security for us is really, really important. But the reason we need a 5th technician desperately is what's happening right now is at the end of the night, you know, a regular pharmacy, you check your prescription, you put it in a bag, and it's done. Not for us, because we do delivery at the end of the night. You take all those bags, so let's say around 80 to 90 bags, and you have to put them into Workday, which is our routing system. So you stick all these bags into the routing system. We usually try to begin this around 3, and it takes 2 hours. So you put them all in the system routes them on a map. You have to compare them and make sure. Hospice has certain, like we have a patient that's transitioning and their Haldol is going to run out at, you know, 8 p.m. We have to make sure that delivery driver is there at 7. So then we have to make sure that all of our special, you know, delivery times are met. And then we have to print it out, divvy up the bags. So it's certainly a process. That's what we need the 5th person for. Right now, we need a 5th person that can all day bag things up and instantly put them in the routing software. So we're not waiting till 3 o'clock to put 90 bags into the software. We also need them to be bagging them up. So they essentially, once we check them, they put them in a bag, they put all the labels, they scan them out, they get the receipt, they throw it into the software. That is where we need the most help, because what's happening right now is around 3 o'clock, it's pulling either data or one of the pharmacists to help with this routing, and so it's causing a lot of stress and a lot of strain at the end of the day. Because our volumes are going up, we have opened up, like what I've been doing to kind of compensate for the time delay in the evening is just opening up the hours at 7 a.m. So if somebody wants to come in, start, I mean, it is leading to a lot of overtime. As you guys know, that is really, really hard on a small business. But at this point, you know, I came from a pharmacy where the pharmacist, we did 500 scripts by ourselves and we typed and checked them, and there was a lot of error like that. And I just don't ever want to operate like that. I'd rather have more before we take on more business than, you know, try to do, you know, more with less. And really, that's what I'm here for, and why I ask for you guys to help us with this 1-to-5 ratio.
Julia, do you want me to leave up the, or board members, do you want me to leave up the photos, or good for me to take them down? I'm not
For
hearing
my
any.
part, Jay, you can take them down. So
Okay,
unless anybody,
I'll put it back up if there's a question. Easy enough now that I've figured out how to do it.
Julia, I have a couple of questions that I'd like to ask if that's okay. So how many hospice facilities do you service?
So we service in North Carolina. Our biggest one is Novant Hospice. So they have about 100 patients in their Charlotte, and they just opened up Rowan, which is Salisbury area, and we are driving to Salisbury to facilitate those patients. And then we also have Providence Care, which is a big one in South Carolina. And between those two, we have. Oh, we just also took on Community Care, which is in South Carolina too. So between the three of them, we have 500 patients.
Okay, so and do those hospice facilities have Pyxis units that you service as well?
No, so the hospice that we do is a home hospice. So the patients are all in their home. They have a few that are in a facility that will deliver, unless a lot of the facilities, they have their own facility pharmacy. So we might deliver like an emergency or maybe a common need. Other than that, all of our patients are at home.
And so also, what is your percent of just regular fills to compounds? Do you have a percentage of the number of just, a narcotic fill, a Haldol fill to something that you would actually be physically compounding? What's the percent ratio there?
I can get the percent on my calculator. It's essentially about 150 scripts are regular and around 50 is compounds.
Okay. And one additional question that I have, it looks like that you have 3 staff pharmacists with only 6 technicians. So I guess my confusion is now, how do those pharmacist schedules work? Because to me, that would be like a 1-to-2 ratio with what you have on with the material that you provided. So I'm just a little confused about how those pharmacists are staffed versus the number of technicians that you have. I don't see how the 1-to-5 would even be possible with the staff that you carry. So can you maybe explain that a little bit if you don't mind?
Sure. So right now there's actually only 2 full-timers. It's myself and Alex. Alex is there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday until 5. I take call 5 until 8 a.m. And then I'm there Thursday, Friday all day. And then I take call Thursday, Friday, 5 p.m. to the next morning. And I also take call Saturday, Sunday. We do have Crystal on staff. Crystal is somebody that I went to school with at Mercer University. And she is our part-timer, like emergency only. So if we have to go on vacation or if something, comes up, she will come in. She still comes in like almost every other month and just shadows to maintain the system. But she essentially takes just an emergency type situation. So she's barely in there.
So generally you have 1 pharmacist there in a given day.
We always have 1 pharmacist and 4 technicians right now. We have
Okay.
2 data, 1 fill, and 1 compound technician.
Okay, thank you.
Julia, are you preparing any sterile preparations at this point?
We are not doing sterile. We are non-sterile only, and we're actually looking to build out to have the negative pressure room. We're really gearing up for 800. I know some places, it take some time, but I think that's the future of pharmacy, and we really just want to make sure that we just got modular units in place and, building out the negative pressure. So no, right now it's just non-sterile. So it's hospice, wound care, it's veterinary and hormone.
So what is your timeline for the 800 rollout, Julia? Kind of looking ahead.
Yeah, so exciting. We actually are moving the pharmacy. I already applied for the new location. You guys have the documents. It's going to be in Mint Hill. It's an industrial park. And I'm, giving you guys photos as it builds out. But essentially, it's really exciting. It's going to be very lab-like. When we first opened the pharmacy in 2016, we did have that storefront because you just don't know. You're a new pharmacy owner. You don't know what kind of business you're going to have. And, throughout the years with hospice essentially being closed door and our compound patient, all getting deliveries, we decided to move to an industrial park, and it's going to be like a lab. So it'll have very similar setup. It's just that instead of the compounder being out in the room air, they're going to be in a negative pressure room. It's going to be completely plexiglass. You'll be able to see them in. We'll have cameras in there. So I'm excited. You guys will get to see it. So again, we're just preparing. You know, there's just so much going on right now with pharmacy, and I know there's a lot of scrutiny on compounding. So although we're not doing sterile, we just want to be, we have consultants that are sterile consultants that are helping us build out as though we're sterile, even though we're not doing sterile, just to, you know, really make sure we're able to stay afloat and be the best we can be. Because I mean, compounding, it's a big business for us. I mean, in terms of, you know, our profits, it's hospice doesn't have really, you know, it's not good margins. I mean, we're driving to Salisbury for like a Senate S, but compounding, thankfully, is what's allowed us to stay in business to be able to take the time to bring on these new hospices.
Sounds so familiar. I had a hospice service also for Catawba and Burke County. I know exactly what you're going through, and I can't imagine taking that much call. You must have your nurses trained really well not to call you much. That's
the thing. It's such a personal relationship with every nurse that when they call, they're like, "Oh gosh, Julie, I'm so sorry." I'm like, "It's okay. I know you need it." So it is, but it's also my heart. That's what I mean, I've been doing it for 12 years. So when I went to pharmacy school, I already had hospice was my everything I wanted to do.
Yeah. Are you able to participate in team meetings, patient care meetings?
So I actually go in person. We do have one account that we're doing Zoom, but the other ones have opened up in person. So yes, traditionally before COVID, I was in the person, and it's just so important to be in there and your part. You know, hospice is so different than, let's say, working at Walgreens, because a lot of times the doctors are, you know, really you're almost like doing the therapy, because they'll ask you, hey, how do I convert this methadone? And what you say kind of is what's implemented. So it's just. It's incredible. But yes, I'm usually in person in the team meetings.
So so this fifth person that you need, is that, I mean, a lot of what that individual, the way you described it, it sounded to me like those were clerical functions. Is this person going to function in a technician role also?
So that's the thing. Technically, yes, we can just get a clerical person. The problem with that is right now we have 100% PTCB technicians. Every technician that we've ever hired is PTCB certified. It's just, we're kind of scared to get a transient technician. We feel like because we do so many controls that your risk of theft goes up. You know, everyone that we hire, we try to hire people that have made pharmacy tech like their career. They're not, you know, in between jobs. This is what they do, and you know, it's just, I don't know, we're just do such high volume of controls that we would rather pay more, have a PTCB, and yes, they're going to be doing clerical work, but we also will cross train eventually, so that if there is a situation they need to jump to filling, they'll know how to do that. So to answer your question, yes, we could hire a clerk. We would really prefer not to.
Bill, just a staff note on that. Recall that the way ratios are calculated is if someone does any function that would require a tech registration at any point during a shift, they are considered a tech for the entirety of the shift. So it's just something to keep in mind, and I think that sort of goes to Julia's point, which is I agree with you that a lot of the duties that Julia described this fifth person doing would be clerical duties that would not require a technician registration. But from a staff perspective, I do appreciate the fact that she is talking about folks who would be cross-trained and might not just do clerical non-technician stuff for the entirety of their shift. So to the extent, I'm not advocating one way or the other, just making the point that from a staff perspective, we do appreciate that folks understand that and are would rather have somebody as a tech, so if they have to step into those duties.
Sure. Well, and that just supports the need for a, you know, increase in the ratio.
Right.
Are there any other questions from any other board members? All right.
No, I don't have anything, Ashley. sorry I got kicked out for most of the discussion. It's something about encountered a problem and having to restart. So I don't know what that was, but anyway.
You got a lot of gremlins in your machine, Wallace.
It's just, when you live in the boonies, it's like some of the problems you have to deal with. So, but FCC says we got great internet. So anyway, because one house in the whole area's got it, so everybody's got it.
Right.
Okay, I'm sorry.
All right. Any other discussion or concerns, questions?
I'm kind of concerned about, basically, going off the precedent that we have set, with some of our other approvals and denials of the 1-to-5 ratio. I'm trying to figure out where this fits with those. Yeah, I don't know if you got. I mean, I don't know if am I making sense, Ashley?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I share those concerns with you as far as one person trying to manage all that, especially with compounding and retail as well. That's my biggest concern. And I agree with you, Keith, there. I don't know if anyone else has some concerns or shares those concerns that Keith and I are bringing up.
Well, I just want to say, having been in Julia's shoes and running a very similar operation, that I know how important it is to be able to use your staff and trust your staff. And personally, I think this board has been a little too conservative in granting these kind of waivers. We have to trust these managers to use their staff and their resources to the best advantage that they can. And I personally support this request for a granting this waiver, because all of you have, or many of you have been in these shoes where you've got it's just not a cookie cutter decision. You've got to be able to manage your operation. And if you need more help in one area or the other, you should have the flexibility to do it. And then it's incumbent on the pharmacist manager to make sure it's done safely. I'm sorry, Michelle.
No, I was cutting you off. Go ahead, Bill.
That's all right, I'm done.
Okay, and then that does raise my concern, though. What has been done, because what I heard was that this person's going to be doing some bagging and some things that really don't necessarily require that expertise. So what has been done to, and maybe my question, Julia, is, can you tell me a little bit more about this wave thing that you have going, where you get the prescriptions ready to go out? Because that seemed to be one of your bottlenecks for you, that it started this issue starting at 3 p.m., right?
Yeah. Yes,
So
that's Workday. And that's the thing is right now, so at the end of the night, it gets hectic because we leave our lines open. So nurses are calling in last minute orders to make it on the delivery. And then also at the end of the night, all the compounds that have been being made all day are coming to the pharmacist to check. So not having that extra bagger is actually harming the pharmacist, because we're many times having to jump over there and sort these bags, which again, yes, it doesn't require a pharmacy tech. It can be done by a clerk, but it's actually pulling us away and straining us at the end of the night, because instead of focusing and taking our time on checking, we're having to do both. So with the WorkWave system, what happens is all the bags that I have checked, all the bottles are in like baskets. And so that technician needs to grab them, they need to bag them up, they need to ring them out, and then they use that receipt to scan the bags into the WorkWave. Okay. Then they have to cross-check the bags that are scanned to make sure the address is populated correctly, because WorkWave will pull an address thinking it's Mint Hill and it's sending them somewhere else. So then you have to cross-check these 90 bags. Then you have to look at the map, make sure all the hospice patients that have to be there on time are being met. And then you divvy the map up and sort that into each driver's bin. And so, again, can a clerk do this? Absolutely. But if we're going to hire a person to be in the pharmacy with us all day, I want them to be PTCB. I want them to be trained in the beginning with bagging, the WorkWave, but then also filling, introduced into data, because at the end of the day, you don't know where you'll be pulled. And it's to have someone that is just knows how to bag the crutch. And so that's kind of where we need, I mean, after 3 right now is just because we're staying there almost like an hour and a half late, and it delays our deliveries. And trust me, I've had patients that have died before a delivery came, and it's the worst feeling ever, knowing that we could have gotten it out an hour and a half in advance. So that's why I'm here. In terms of monitoring, that extra technician isn't adding any, they're just taking away from our distraction, because I mean, it's bagging, it's things that really the pharmacist shouldn't be jumping to at the end of the night, because it's already so stressful.
Well, I'm not sure exactly where to start, because I'd actually made myself a note after the first presentation to talk to Jay a little bit more, to get some offline, to get some idea of what is the history behind the type of situations where you've extended, increased ratios and those kind of things. And I guess what the point I'm trying to make is, I think we've got to do everything in the world to not be arbitrary, to be consistent, and maybe have some kind of criteria. Maybe there are, and I'm just not aware of them. Of what kind of things do you look for when somebody is asking for an increase? I remember one time I went and asked for an increase in technicians, and I mean, after I picked myself up off the floor, from the administrator that I reported to, said, well, you don't need another technician, you need another pharmacist. And, and I sort of picked myself up off the floor, gathered my thoughts, and said, yes, I do need another pharmacist. But, maybe it's just a part-time pharmacist kind of person to free up a technician that's doing, some duties in your operation now that, could be covered with expanding pharmacist coverage a little bit. I don't know. I mean, your operation, I don't, but my biggest thing is try not to be arbitrary between cases. And if the person's being hired to be to do primarily clerical duties, or really clerical duties, and you increase the ratio, then you open the door for that person to do, to be that technician. So that's the real question. It's not really what you're allowing them to do right now. It's that you've opened the door for them to do more as a technician later on. So I don't know. That's the thing I'm struggling with is just trying to know what's consistently been done by the board in the past, which I don't have that knowledge base, being new back to the board.
Well, I think at least in the past, Wallace, with my tenure on the board, we've tended to not approve these increases for reasons that I'm not sure we had. It's hard to get a feel for the organization in 5 or 10 minutes in a presentation. And so I don't know that we've made the best decisions in the past. With tying the hands of somebody like Kennedy or Julia. Now, we approved Kennedy's. We haven't voted on Julia's yet, but, Julia needs more help. She's going to have to hire somebody. And her desire is to hire a high-quality trained pharmacy, certified pharmacy technician, as opposed to having to, if we don't approve this ratio, she's going to have to hire either a part-time pharmacist, which is maybe not bad, but maybe that's not the best use of resources either, or she's going to have to hire a clerk and force that clerk to not perform any technical task. And as I see it in her operation, that's probably impossible to do and really comply with the, with the intent of working in a pharmacy as a clerk or a technician. I don't see, and what I mean is that clerk is not going to be able to not perform technical duties. She's going to be forced to basically be in violation of the rules.
So they're forced to be across the line, so to speak.
Yeah, we're going to put her in that position.
Jay, how many of these do we get across the board, annually?
Not not very many, Michelle. And if you guys want, I gave a couple of these. I'm getting a weird feedback here. Hang on, I'm getting a Michelle. Mute your mic for 1 second. Let me see if that. Test. Yeah. So Michelle, if you'll hold, no, I'm getting a feedback from somebody else. If there's anybody out there with it just went away. Michelle, we don't get a whole lot of these. In the memo that you guys got, I did summarize the 3 most recent ones that the board has considered, and I think this circle, and Wallace, even though you weren't on the board when these 3 were considered, I think you intentionally or accidentally pretty well summarized what the break point was when the board considered those. Is there were 2 5-to-1 requests that were made by large chain pharmacies, and there was extensive testimony about the need from the pharmacist manager, and ultimately the board's conclusion in those was that the amount of work burden that was being placed on pharmacists and to do things that only pharmacists could do, not techs, was enormous, and that what both of those places needed was more pharmacist staffing. And there was a concern that a 5-to-1 ratio in those instances was going to make a bad situation worse because it wasn't doing anything to take any load off of the pharmacist at all. So that in a nutshell was the ratio. Whereas there was a long-term care pharmacy request in November of 2019 that was similar in material respects to Kennedy's request just a few minutes ago. And it was again looking at that. That was a more specialized operation where technicians were doing very specialized technician only type functions, and there wasn't a concern. The board didn't have a concern about stretching the pharmacist too thin because the pharmacist in those cases was not also now being asked to give 100 shots a day and call this and do the other thing. So that's where you guys have tended to focus is the pharmacist staffing at a pharmacy. Well, where else would it be? At a pharmacy sufficient so that the pharmacist can do those things that only the pharmacist can do and still have the capacity to supervise the number of technicians that they have asked to supervise. So that hopefully didn't muddy things worse, Michelle, but that's sort of how this has gone. And there are those 3 that go back to late 2018, but it's not been frequent that we get these requests. Sorry, I went on too long, Ashley.
No, you're good. I mean, just from my experience, and I've probably got the least amount of experience here, but every case is so different. From the last ones that I've heard, every single one, I mean, just over the last 2 years, they all seem to be different. So Wallace, I agree with you that we need some standards on that, but every single situation brings different, workflow, all kinds of different problems to the table that they need extra staff. So I think it's hard to hear all that in 10 minutes. I would agree with you on that, like you said, Bill. So is this an option to where with this situation, unless somebody wants to make a motion, would it be appropriate, Jay, for us to basically discuss this in a closed session and then we could get back with Julia? Is that safe to do that?
Your choices are you can go ahead if you've had the discussion you think you need to have, you can go ahead and take a motion, or you can take it under advisement and communicate with Julia once a decision has been made.
Does anybody have a thought on that at all about where we should go with this? Michelle, you're on mute still. I'm sorry.
I've got to get better with this. That's what I would like to do. I'd like to have a closed session discussion about it because here's where I am. I do not want the board to limit people in their ability to provide service and to make a living. I don't think that that's part of the equation. But I do want to make sure that each individual case, that with the nuances, that we do look and make sure that there isn't something else that could be done to help and do a process re-engineering potentially and not have to hire someone. So I would like, oh, that's the longest motion in the world. I'd like to move that we table it for a private discussion, closed session.
I would say you really don't even need to have a motion on that if that's the will of the board.
I'm great with going into closed session now, maybe, and try to talk through it so that we can move forward and get her an answer.
Let me suggest procedurally that it would be much easier with the virtual format if we conducted all closed session discussion at the end of the meeting and then can come back in and I can communicate afterward.
Point well taken, Jay.
I just think we need to get her a decision today if we can.
Yes.
We can do that.
Yeah.
We can do that.
Julia,
Right.
thank you so much for your presentation, and we appreciate your day. And we will discuss this all in closed session, and I'm sure Jay will get back with you today.
Yeah, I'll get back to you today, Julia. Are you going to be available by phone?
Yeah, I'll be available, and really, it's no rush. We're holding off just to hear back from you guys, and I just wanted to say I respect everyone's comments, and I do agree with them. And we're just we're not in a place to get a pharmacist. We're only checking 200 prescriptions a day. So even if I found someone that only wants to work 2 hours a day, which would be really hard to get a quality pharmacist for 2 hours a day, again, it just puts me and Alex into the tech role, and it just doesn't make sense for us right now. The pharmacist doesn't need any. I mean, we can do double what we're doing, and that's what I'm used to doing. So, and that's kind of the situation. And I also do agree that if we get a clerk, and I mean, I think it's definitely gonna cross some lines, because even, all the lines are ringing, and all of a sudden the clerk got to put a patient on hold, and the patient's like starts to place an order. I don't know. Those boundaries are not so. It's very gray in the law. I'm sure Mr. J, it's so hard to read the law and sometimes get the answer. So I think if you guys do deny it, I do respect that. We're just not in a need of a pharmacist. It's not about the money at all. We've always overpaid our tax, and for us, it's not about that. It's about making sure we can operate for a very long time and do the right thing. So I think our step would be to get a clerk, but again, it just makes me nervous. And they're going to be confined to one section of the pharmacy versus getting a PTCB certified tech and cross training. So, cross training that they know data, that they know filling, and then the techs can rotate who gets those positions. That would be ideal. But I respect you guys. I respect all the opinion. It was a lot good information, and I hope you guys have a good day. And no rush. We're in no rush to hear back. You guys take your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good morning.
Madam President, could I make a request for a short recess for biological needs? You're muted, Ashley.
That works for me. So
Should
do
we
we need to take?
Yeah, pick a time, Ashley, and tell us when to come back.
Let's see. What about 11:25?
Sounds good. We shall
All
be
right.
back.
Sounds great.
Come on.
Well, I don't know what all that racket was, but it sounded like you were tearing up something.
Oh, that was me probably. I went downstairs to get some coffee and I was turning the television off. My wife left the television on and the remote control hit the floor and battery shot out of it and everything else. So I may have contributed to that noise there.
Sounded like you turned it off with a baseball bat.
I heard the sequel to Gladiator wasn't very good, Andy. And now I believe it after seeing you.
Oh, is that what my background is?
I don't know. It sort of looks like it. Mad Max.
Yeah.
3.
I just wanted to pick something, I'm sure people get tired of looking at my blank walls and my guitar and my banjo. So I was trying to shake it up a little bit.
Well, my wife put my desk in the corner, as you can see, so that's what you get from me.
Yeah.
Andy, is that a Star Wars background you got up there?
I don't know. That's what Clint was asking. I'm not sure exactly what it is. Maybe I should go with something a little more. I don't
It's
know.
Mad Max Beyond Bowie's Creek.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Clint, I got your email. That's some good eating right there.
Have you been?
Yes.
I swear, even though it's a good 30-minute detour each way, every time we went to Kentucky, going and coming almost. And it's fun, so.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a neat place.
It is. They had one in town right there across from campus for a little while, but then it went out of business.
There's one called Frost Top as soon as you come into Huntington.
Mm-hmm.
They're really good too.
There's an old drive-in somewhere we went. Is that Frost Tops?
Yeah, got the big mug on top.
I don't know. We went somewhere that was an old drive-in one time when we did not want to go up to Lesage. It must have been Frost Top.
There's one called Stewart's too. It's old.
Stewart's is it. Stewart's.
Yeah, they got chili on the bottom.
Yeah. You walk up and order at the little thing in the center of the parking lot. Yep, that's the one we went to. I've driven through there many, many times.
I spent one too many years there. 5 years for my 4-year degree.
That's what your parents were saying, I'm sure.
Most definitely.
One of Jay and my friends from DC's dad grew up there, and her dad owned a bakery, but I think it was probably closed by the time you were there.
Oh, I bet Sigel's dad,
Yeah.
Torleone's Bakery. Yeah.
Yeah. That's where the hung out.
Clint, I don't know if you saw former Solicitor General Drew Days died yesterday.
I did not see that.
Yep.
What does the Solicitor General do?
So the United States Solicitor General is essentially the federal government's attorney in the U.S. Supreme Court. It's a lot more than that, but that's what most people know is that's the Solicitor General and the Solicitor General's assistants brief and argue the United States government's positions in cases before the Supreme Court. They also have fairly significant oversight responsibility for the federal government's entire appellate docket. So I would have killed to have gotten a job as an assistant solicitor general when I was in DC.
And about 25 years ago, the trend started for states to have their own solicitors general who do U.S. Supreme Court and important, like North Carolina Supreme Court cases.
So Matt Salchak, who, Bill, I'm trying to remember, you may not remember Matt. I know Wallace would. Matt was the attorney that handled the last round of our long-running lawsuit with the Rules Review Commission. Matt handled that case in the North Carolina Supreme Court, and Matt was the North Carolina Solicitor General for what, Clint, about 2 years, right at 2 years?
Yeah, something like that.
If you're an appellate law nerd, it's the ne plus ultra of practice. Clint, I sure thought back in 2004 that now DC Circuit Judge Patty Millett was gonna help me get a job as an ASG, and she did try, but it was not successful. They had some opening. They had 2 openings in 2004, and I applied for one, and I thought for sure Patty was going to get me over the hump on that one.
But no.
Patty lived about 1.5 miles from Amy and I down in Virginia. So we used to see her all the time.
I remember going to some meeting about something with Dawn, and she was running it.
She was an absolute. She was the ASG who was on the other side of the case I did up until about a month before the argument, and then she had to there was some shuffling of assignments, so she handed it off to Malcolm. I can't remember Malcolm's last name now, but he's still at the SG's office.
Jay, are you ready to get started again?
Yes, ma'am. I'm ready.
I don't see Wallace. I don't know where, and Michelle. I don't see their pictures, so.
Yeah, maybe they'll come back on here in just a sec. I think I accidentally unpinned you, Ashley.
Okay. Well, that's because I closed my laptop not thinking, and I had to rejoin the call, so I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. I always assume that any issue of that sort is operator error by me, which is a safe assumption 98% of the time.
So it looks like we're just waiting on Michelle, and then we'll be ready to start back.
All righty.
Louisville's a lot nicer than I remember.
I heard talking over. I couldn't figure out who was who on that.
Sorry, Clint.
I said Louisville's a lot nicer than I remember.
It is beautiful.
Everybody's got their back.
Bald head and get out of the way. It'd probably look a lot nicer.
See Yadkinville up there over the horizon.
It's beautiful this time of year.
Mm-hmm. Did y'all get good color this year, Keith, in the leaves?
It was great.
Yeah. Have you still got it, or did the rains this past week pretty much knock them down?
It's pretty much in my yard now. Yeah, pretty much gone.
I tell you, if you're coming through Chapel Hill this time of year and you really want to see a pretty tree, there is an enormous ginkgo tree right in front of New West building on Cameron Street, right smack dab in the middle of campus. And you all know when a ginkgo tree, when the leaves go yellow, I mean, they are a brilliant yellow. And this tree is gigantic. And of course, then it has this curtain around it. It's gorgeous.
Okay, we expect you to take a picture and send.
I have pictures of that tree on a portable hard drive. I need to go pull some of those off. All right, I think we've got everybody, Ashley, if you're ready.
I think so too. All right, so it looks like we are going into Daniel Kaufman's presentation, Jay.
Right, and I see Dan, he just unmuted himself. So Dan, I'll just give the introduction and then I'll hand it off to you all. It's by way of background, Board Rule 1602, paragraph C, provides that an applicant for licensure without examination, which is that would be someone who's applying for licensure by reciprocity or who is seeking to reinstate a license, The rule says that an applicant for licensure without examination who has not practiced pharmacy within 2 years prior to application, the board shall require that applicant to obtain additional continuing education, practical pharmacy experience, successfully complete one or more parts of the board's licensure examination, or a combination of those as the board deems necessary to ensure the applicant can practice safely. There is a general policy that the board has, but I do want to emphasize this is a general policy. The board, under the plain text of the rule, is instructed to make a individual specific determination on all such applicants. But the general policy, and I'll just focus on the two prongs of that are really most relevant here, is that an applicant who has been out of practice for more than 2 years but less than 5, the baseline policy is that applicant has to obtain 500 hours of internship, 15 hours of continuing education for each year out of practice, and taken past the MPJE. I should point out the obvious here. All reciprocity applicants have to take and pass the MPJE, so that's really not at issue here. A pharmacist who has been out of practice for more than 5 years, the baseline policy is that applicant must obtain 1,500 hours of practical experience and taken past the NAPLEX as well as the MPJE. So that brings us to Dan, who has applied to reciprocate his Illinois license to practice pharmacy. He is also licensed in Georgia, and he is not and never has been licensed to practice in North Carolina. Dan has lived in Mooresville, North Carolina, going back to 2007, and he worked for CVS Health. But after some follow-up communications with staff, Mr. Kaufman has stated, and he's provided a job description that I think confirms that he does not currently practice pharmacy in North Carolina and has never practiced pharmacy in North Carolina. He's focused on, and Dan can talk. And Dan, I'm not trying to do all the talking here, but just to
appreciate it.
And Dan can you certainly can ask Dan about his duties, and you do have the job description there. Dan did state to board staff that he's practiced occasional retail pharmacy for a CVS in Douglasville, Georgia, and Marietta, Georgia, on a PRN basis over the past 5 years. And he clarified that he last practiced in Georgia on December 5th, 2009, and that he practiced down there every 2.5 to 3 months between March 2019 and December 2019. So, and Dan, you clear any of this up that I've gotten wrong in any respect. And so that's been a very limited amount, looks like about 4 times practicing pharmacy in 2019. So Dan, staff sent Dan the standard out of practice letter, which explains the policy, and Dan has, as the letter clearly contemplates, asked that the board consider not applying the baseline policy to full effect, and he has included a letter about that, and you have the various documents behind your tab. And Dan, these documents are all the documents. There's nothing you haven't seen in there, but it's Dan's reciprocity applications for us and for NABP. And it is job description, as already said, what Dan has been doing for CVS as a district leader, and also his statements and clarifications on prior practice down in Georgia. So with that, Dan, at last, I will draw a breath and shut up, and it's your request, so I turn it over to you.
Well, so first off, can you hear me okay? It's the first time I'm using these ear pods, so I was hoping that everything would work out. And so, first off, thank you, Jay, for the introduction. I appreciate that, and I'd also like to thank you all for your time and also your service. So, I just kind of wanted to start out with a little bit about me and kind of go through the timeline of what Jay threw up there and kind of prefaced with. I grew up in northern Indiana, with a father who was a pharmacist. And so he was a retail pharmacist, started off with a little company called Hook's Drugs. And through the years, yep, I'm seeing the nod in there. Through the years, it changed hands several times, but he remained in the same town for his entire 50 years as a pharmacist when he finally retired in 2017. So I've been around pharmacy for my entire life. And I remember, and I want to share this story because it really resonates with me over the years and as I've grown. You know, as a kid, we'd sit down to dinner every once in a while and you know, my father would say, "Hey, how was your day?" And as a kid, you say, "Oh, it was good." And that was about it. I think many of you guys can relate to something like that. And so one time I asked him back. I said, "Well, how was yours? And what'd you do?" And his response to me was, "Well, Dan, I saved lives today." And at the time, it didn't really mean a whole lot to me. But through the years, it's changed my view on things. And so really, it kind of is the basis for me getting into pharmacy in the first place. I broke a couple of bones in my back, had a bone scan, went to Purdue, specialized in nuclear, moved to Chicago and worked in nuclear for 5 years. Loved Chicago, but met my wife, loved her more. We moved to Georgia. She's a pharmacist as well. We both went to work for CVS there in the retail setting. And ultimately, I moved into a different capacity with CVS, and we moved to North Carolina. In the role here, it's changed through the years, and as I've grown, I've seen things change, and really it got me away from the things that I really like to do, and that's really helping people. And you know, in my role, yes, I was responsible for maintaining financials, the hiring, the professional development, the training, the mentoring, and some of the things that I did was, you know, I trained our pharmacist on MME. The time that I spent in Georgia really was linked to SOAP note training, and they needed somebody, and I was there in a hotel to pick up a couple of shifts, and so I did. But my time in Georgia that over the past couple of years was really to train me back on SOAP notes. I've trained pharmacists on that. I've trained pharmacists on the time delay safes and how to conduct conversations to help people from a medication management therapy standpoint, and how to connect with people to help them with that. So I've acted as a trusted resource. Over the last couple of years, I've really grown with a huge interest in the opioid abuse, and conducted some seminars with some other pharmacists in the area. I've maintained the entire time that I've been in North Carolina that I have not made any professional decisions for any of the pharmacists. So I provided them with information, and they ultimately made the decisions, and I supported them on that. So over the past 6 months, the role has changed, and I think that the role of the community pharmacist or the pharmacist has changed as well. And it really, with COVID and the pandemic, I've been able to enhance my training with that as well. So I helped organize a rapid testing clinic that serviced 120 patients a day in Columbia, South Carolina for CVS. While I didn't do any of the data entry because I'm not licensed in South Carolina, I did help train the staff on how to do all of those types of things. I am certified to fit and test N95 masks. There are not a lot of people that can do that with CVS. So I'm there. So what am I doing now? Well, right now, I am actually practicing in the state of Georgia. So I've been practicing here since the end of October 25th. I am licensed in Georgia. All the while, I have maintained all of the CE requirements in both Illinois and in Georgia. And so while I've been practicing, it's actually everything that I've hoped for. really enjoy giving immunizations. I helped a customer with a meter the other day, picking out the meter, and part of that was insurance. I've been answering COVID questions right and left. The outreach calls and the techniques that I trained people on, I'm actually using those techniques and connecting with people. And you know, I'm able to use a lot of those tools that I've trained on in the past. And so overall, I understand where you guys are coming from. I understand that your role is to protect the public from somebody like me. I think that my proximity to the pharmacy over the past several years, while I haven't practiced, and let's be honest about the whole thing, the shifts in Georgia, that doesn't count as practicing. I understand that. But I believe that the things that I've done in the past and the proximity that I've been to it has kept me abreast of things that are happening. You know, I am commuting right now from Mooresville to Augusta to practice. It's a little bit hard on me. So I was hoping that you would reconsider and believe that my experience that I'm meeting the requirements, and I'd like to be authorized to test for the reciprocity exam without any additional requirements. That's all I've got. I'm going to be shorter and sweeter. Fair enough.
Short and sweet has never been my long suit, as all the board members can ruefully tell you, I'm sure. But
that's fair.
So Ashley, I think it's open for y'all for questions, and I don't have any staff questions. I think Dan has laid it out very clearly, what his background is, what he's been doing, and it comes down to you all for the application of that rule, which is, as the rule states, it's designed to make sure that somebody is capable of stepping in and practicing competently and safely. So to y'all.
Does anyone have any questions, Bill?
Are you, so you're currently still employed with CVS?
I am, yeah.
And is that where you want to practice? Do you want to?
I want to practice retail pharmacy. And I just absolutely love the interaction with people. I think that the role with COVID and the possibility of helping in this is even more important. And I just want to do it closer to home. So I will move.
If you got licensed tomorrow, would you have shifts assigned to you at CVS?
I would.
Okay.
I have them assigned to me in Georgia with CVS right now. I do actually have a shift tomorrow. I'm licensed in Georgia.
So how often are you practicing in Georgia?
I'm working anywhere from 38 to 42 hours a week right now, and have been since the end of October. October 25th is when I started here.
Okay, I'm not sure that was clear from the.
This letter was written on October 7th, and so it wasn't happening at that time.
Right. It is a little bit confusing, Bill, but yeah, no, he's right that he started practicing essentially full time down in Georgia after making the request here. So there's it all lines up.
So prior to the October change, you were just filling in every now and then in other pharmacies. It looks like from the letter that you submitted that your last practice time in Georgia was December the 5th, 2019, prior to your change in October of 2020, correct?
Yes, and let me be 100% transparent on that. There was a couple of times when I went to the state of Georgia because we're rolling out the health hubs. And in those stores, we're doing some additional medication management. So I was there to learn about the health hubs, also learn about soap notes. At the time when I was there, I was staying in a hotel. We all went. I was licensed. They had somebody who had an emergency, so I went and filled in. So this was not, it was an accident. Okay. I'm just trying to be 100% transparent with you guys. So, and the same thing occurred in December. We were there several times, but those were the only 2 times that I really practiced there. There was a couple of shifts here and there, and it was an accident.
Does anyone else, Wallace, have you got a question there?
Yes, I guess I'm still a little bit confused. In October, you had the change, and you are now working, what, 20, what'd you say, 28, 30 hours a week or something like that? Is that what you said? Is that?
So, yeah. So I made the decision to 100% step out of the field role. And October 25th, I started working anywhere full-time, 38 to 41 hours every week in the state of Georgia. So ever since then, I've worked in the retail pharmacy. So I have shifts at a store. So for example, I worked yesterday, all day. I'm working tomorrow. Yep.
But it's still just since sometime, that time in October. I mean,
yes, sir.
That's the extent of what you're actually have experience really working in a store as we traditionally think about it.
Yes, sir. That's 100% correct.
And by working in a store, you're behind the counter dispensing prescriptions, counseling patients, and doing other pharmacist activities?
Absolutely 100%. Giving shots, checking prescriptions, taking verbal orders, yes. Managing the technician staff, yes. No other pharmacist there, me unlocking the doors.
So given that situation, Jay, is he not eligible to reciprocate based on the fact that he is practicing pharmacy?
Well, at the time he applied, he had not practiced pharmacy for quite a number of years. And that's the rule that says when you apply, and he is practicing now, but he had not been practicing when he applied for licensure by reciprocity. Which of course doesn't prevent him. I mean, what he's doing down in Georgia, Dan is absolutely right. He is licensed to practice in Georgia. He is licensed to practice in Illinois. He's kept both of those licenses active. He has obtained all the CE he needs to do that. And he can walk into pharmacies and practice as he is doing. But yes, the rule is when you apply for licensure without examination at the time of application, if you've not been practicing pharmacy, that rule comes into play. So that's how we got where we are today.
Okay.
But just real quick, I'm sorry, Keith. One real quick thing is, but the fact that he is working now is certainly something you can and should consider as you're making your decision today. Sorry, Keith.
Now, I was going to say, what if he would have made that application today? Would this request have to be made?
I would still view that because this would, if someone applies and has been out of practice for a number of years, but said, "Yeah, I just started practice again last week," I would still view the rule as applying in that case and would bring it before you guys. And Dan, and to Dan's credit, he's certainly not trying to. He is and has been completely transparent about what he's done, and he hasn't. So, from a staff perspective, I've got no concern that Dan going back to work in Georgia at the end of October was any part of any sort of subterfuge or other kind of things. Clearly, it's not. The issue that comes before you guys, you should factor that in, and as you make your decision about whether whether you deem him sufficiently safe to go forward with the licensing process in North Carolina now, or whether there's some set of requirements, either all of the requirements you have in your baseline policy or some subset of those. And again, you're entitled to tailor that as individually specific as you wish to do it.
So what is the request? Is it or which arm of the rule are we being asked to consider modifying or waiving? Is it the out of practice up to 2 years, the 2 to 5 years, or more than 5 years?
My view is that Dan falls in the out of practice for 5 or more years category. But Dan, I'll put it to you. I mean, Dan's the one's asking for the variation. So again, MPJE is not something we can waive because all reciprocity candidates have to take and pass. And Dan's not asking for that. I know that. But what's on the table is the baseline 1,500-hour internship requirement and take and pass NAPLEX. And Dan, I certainly you can say with specificity, but those are the 2 requirements that sit there by default.
Yeah. So and so I would absolutely, if you felt that it would be appropriate for me to practice in Georgia for 2, 3, 4 months, I'll do it if I can get closer to home. And let's say 40 hours a week on average, and whatever that might be, to put me in a place where that might be better in your eyes. I feel like I've stayed close enough to it with the things that I've done. The CE that I've done has been relevant to the retail side of the business. A lot of it is opioid, a lot of it is immunization training, and I am APHA certified to give immunization, and I love to do it. And I think that that's going to be an coming up in the next couple of months. And
let's hope it is.
Yeah, no doubt. And I absolutely understand where you're coming from. So, I'm just asking for an adjusted pathway. I think that my experience is relevant to the practice of pharmacy. I don't feel like I've been away. It's, I didn't step away to go do accounting or to do something in the finances industry. I was still very close to pharmacy and many of the things. And the greatest thing about it is the past almost month, I've been able to use many of the things that I trained on and see how effective they are and see what's not effective. And so some of the things that I trained on and taught people, gosh, whoops, that was a miss. So seeing it in real life. So I would just ask that you consider my experiences different than somebody who may be completely out of practice. Maybe they stayed at home for 10 years raising or something like that. That's all that I respectfully ask.
Do we have anything, Clint, does he need to add any comments to this situation, Jay, at all?
Yeah, I think Clint had something he wanted to share.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a spate of requests, particularly when Glaxo was moving their headquarters, of people in pharmacy practice adjacent roles who came in, and we had several a month. And at that time, we went back and studied our typical results for pharmacy adjacent people out of practice. And for people in this time frame, the typical result was internship of 500 to 750 hours, and I don't know of anybody we ever made take the NAPLEX again. Now, you may think that Dan is more pharmacy adjacent than someone who's been working at Glaxo, coming up with pharmaceuticals or less, but that was sort of the ballpark result we found.
So Jay, I have a question. Clint, oh, I'm sorry, Wallace.
No, that's fine. Go ahead with your question.
I was just going to ask, if the board decides to lower the amount of practice hours, does that have to be within North Carolina, or that can be at his current job in Georgia and count for those internship hours?
I think that's entirely up to you guys. I think the sense has always been that it doesn't matter that much as long as it's supervised by a practicing physician. pharmacist, because he's got to take and pass the MPJE. So that's going to be his test of regulatory knowledge in North Carolina. I think what the purpose behind internship is to make sure that the clinical skills and the day-to-day skills are brushed up where they need to be. So in my view, in a situation like this, it's not critical that it be in North Carolina versus Georgia.
Well, Ashley, what I was going to ask about was, I'm not sure, but again, I apologize, but I'm not sure what the current sort of process for discussion of these things are. Do you normally go into a closed session to discuss the, your decisions on these things and to hammer out exactly how you're going to approach it or not? I don't know. I mean, it seems like I would call that was the practice that we used to do, but I'm not saying that's right or wrong. But
Yep.
anyway,
Wallace, at this point, I think that's a great option for us. If anyone else is okay with that, I think that would be something that certainly Wallace brings a good point.
I have a couple more questions. Dan, what does Illinois require per year for continuing education?
It's 15 hours. Well, it's 30 hours every 2 years.
And
none of it
hours?
is live. None of it is live.
How many hours have you obtained for Illinois or Georgia?
30. I do 15 every year because they're on opposite cycles. So they're each 30.
Okay. So you satisfied that.
Mm-hmm.
So if we granted, if we considered the out of practice for up to 2 years, you'd already have the continuing education. Except 5, which must be contact hours, which, do you have some live CE?
I do. 2018, I had some live CE, but I can obtain those very easily.
Right. Okay, that's all of my questions.
Okay.
well, I'm for moving to just, I think, hopefully everybody's got the questions answered, and, as adding this to our closed session agenda to go ahead and make a decision, and so we can make some kind of decision today.
I appreciate that. I do have one question, if I may. If you do deem that I need 500, 700 hours, as you were talking a little bit earlier, and you kind of indicated state of Georgia, Jay, you were talking about that. I've also applied for reciprocity in the state of South Carolina, and I was just given the authorization to test in that state. So would I be able to do it in South Carolina as well?
From a staff perspective, my answer would be the same, is that if the function of the hours is to make sure you're brushed up on clinical and patient care competency, to my mind, it doesn't matter at all, but certainly that's something that the board members could discuss as part of that.
Perfect. Okay.
Dan, thank you for your time today.
You're muted, Ashley. I'm sorry.
I think the right move here, guys, as has been alluded to, is to put this on our closed session agenda and talk it through and figure out what we can do for Dan and get him an answer later today.
Well, I tell you what, I truly appreciate your all of your time today, and I appreciate the service that you're providing. So thank you so much, and I appreciate it again.
Dan, thanks from a staff perspective. Many thanks to you for clear and constant communication throughout the process. Much appreciated.
No, you've been great too. Thank you.
That was all I was going to say, is thank you, Dan, for your transparency and being very, very open about exactly where you're coming from. So.
Well, thank you.
All right, good folks. Well, Dan, I'll be back in touch this afternoon with you, either by phone or email.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right. All righty. Have a good day, guys.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you too.
Alrighty.
All right, Jay. So it looks like we're moving on to COVID-19 matters.
Yep, and the remainder of the items on our agenda are probably going to move pretty quickly as you guys see fit on that. So COVID-19 matters, 2 updates. One is making progress on the COVID-19 vaccine continuing education course. Staff down at Campbell have begun the planning. We're in the process of negotiating a contract. I am hopeful that's going to get finalized this week. It's not been as easy as I thought or hoped it would be, but that has nothing to do with Andy. Anytime you're negotiating with a university, there are people that feel that compelled to put their stamp on things, whether it whatever the contribution may actually be. Working through that, and Sam Clinton, who Andy knows and works with down there, has been terrific with communication. So my hope is that this week we will get the contract where I think it needs to be, and that Campbell is comfortable with, and then I will be getting in touch with the members of the Finance Committee to get together for a quick phone call if that happens to discuss the contract. And as you know, last month you authorized the Budget and Finance Committee to review the contract and make a decision to sign in. So feel pretty good that that's going to get done this week and we'll move into production. The other update, and this is going to sound a little bit weird, everybody's familiar, of course, that the United States Department of Health and Human Services has exercised power under the PrEP Act to authorize pharmacists to order and administer and qualified pharmacy technicians to administer ACIP recommended pediatric vaccines and COVID-19 vaccines when they become available. That's notwithstanding any statement to the contrary. There is, as I think you all are also familiar with, a state law. I'm getting a weird feedback here, by the way. I'm getting an echo. Test. I'm still getting it. Wallace, can you mute your...
Yeah, just tried to do it. This thing.
There you go. Test. Yeah, that got it. That was the echo. Thanks, Wallace. There's a state law process whereby immunizing pharmacists can be authorized to administer COVID-19 vaccines, and I've reproduced that in your memo. There's only in government processes. North Carolina Medicaid will not be able to pay pharmacists for administering the COVID-19 vaccine based on the PrEP Act authorization. They're going to have what will amount to a standing order from the state health director, and then pharmacists will administer the vaccine, and then the pharmacist will be able to bill for that. So NCDHHS simply asked the execs of the healthcare boards to remind each of you that there is a process that as soon as a COVID-19 vaccine is approved will be initiated by the state health director to get approval for pharmacists to, under state law, to administer the vaccine. And that will require the state health director to consult with us and some other folks. I think it's going to be a very simple process. But I'm putting this on your radar because it's conceivable that we might have to convene a special short meeting in December or sometime before the January meeting to do that. So the DHHS just asked that we all be on standby. So I'm reminding you about all of that. But again, to anybody that's on this call and listening, pharmacists and qualified pharmacy technicians have the ability to administer that vaccine under the grant of federal authority. This is a state law mechanism that needs to be exercised purely for purposes of Medicaid reimbursement. So I'll stop on that. It's a weirdo situation.
Jay, just out of curiosity, can you, without getting too deep into the woods here, what's the disconnect here that wouldn't allow federal DHHS in a state of emergency to be enough for this all to just go smoothly without other steps?
I have no idea. None.
That's a great question, Andy.
It's something to do with the state Medicaid statute, but I don't know what that is. Their feeling is that I think it has something to do with pharmacists are not providers for state Medicaid purposes. So if the pharmacist orders the vaccine, that they can't bill for that. Whereas if it's a state standing order from the state health director who's an MD, they can. But look, if you're asking me to explain the logic or lack thereof, I don't know.
I mean, you and Clint you're the attorneys in the room. I mean, to me, it sounds like you have a situation where state law is trying to preclude federal mandate during a state.
Actually, no, it really isn't, because this is purely an issue of payment. Pharmacists have the authority as granted by the feds to administer the vaccine, but that doesn't obligate state Medicaid to pay for it. Okay. So that's what's going on.
I mean, if y'all remember a few years ago, y'all amended the rule about what nurse practitioners could dispense to and prescribe to include over-the-counter nicotine addiction treatment. And, since it was over-the-counter, there was no need to do that other than some strange Medicaid payer rule. So, I think the answer is sometimes you got to do stupid stuff to make it work.
I will also say there's a question percolating out there that the question has been raised that whether, with respect to technicians administering a COVID vaccine, someone has floating around an issue about, well, if the pharmacist doesn't order the COVID vaccine under the PrEP Act, instead the order for the vaccine comes from a state standing order or from a prescriber, whoever, can a qualified pharmacy technician of the PrEP Act still administer that vaccine? The answer to that is yes, they absolutely can. The federal authority is for qualified pharmacy technicians to administer the vaccine. It doesn't say that the order to do so has to come from a pharmacist. So long as the technician meets the qualifications as specified under USDHHS and is supervised as required by USDHHS, a qualified pharmacy technician can administer a COVID-19 vaccine, whoever orders it, pharmacist, state health director, whomever. So you may get some questions about that, and I probably at some point going to need to get something up on the website about that. And Andy, and it is sort of it strikes you as sort of a rather elaborate set of machinations to go through, but the good part though is that I think the right people over at at North Carolina DHHS, they're just really working hard to make sure that when we've got vaccines that bang, we're ready to go from day one. So I'm very grateful to Director Tilson and to Amanda Fuller-Moore over there for getting all the groundwork laid. And Blake Cook, Andy over at Medicaid, he's not trying to get in the way either. Blake also is working his tail off to make sure that the right things are done, so there's no delay.
I know Blake very well. He's great.
Yeah.
So, all those people you named are obviously fantastic. Yep. So, yeah.
Clint's right. Just sometimes you're stuck with the system you have, but the good part is there are good folks over there who are working through it to get it done. So that's it on the COVID stuff. I mean, I could go into the numbers, but you all have seen them. It's we're in a bad spot and going to be for a while. Ashley, unless there are any questions any more about either of those two things, I'd be happy to turn it over to Missy to tell us the good news on the renewal season so far.
it over to Missy.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep, loud and clear, Missy.
All right, perfect. So yeah, I mean, some good news following that is that renewals are going great. I mean, you can see behind your tab that I've compared last year to this year, and everything is right on track. And just to kind of give you an idea that, you know, how things are so dynamic is that, you know, these numbers on the chart are from Friday at about 3 p.m. and I ran the numbers again this morning, and pharmacists have increased to, you know, 558 more pharmacists have renewed since Friday. 561 additional technicians have renewed. 75 pharmacies have renewed. So, you know, we are right on track. And we're only 17 days into the renewal. So all that looks really, really good. The total of renewals, you know, on Friday was 8,020. Today it is 9,308. They're rolling in. You know, our system gets hit a couple of times every minute. So things happen very quickly, but everything is running smoothly. We haven't had any problems with payments or anything like that. So those are the numbers. I made a couple of notes here at the bottom of, you know, the chart, and I did expect a lot of calls about the CE requirement. Pharmacists asking if it was waived due to COVID, and I honestly haven't gotten any of those calls. So I'm happy to be wrong about that. I got a few before renewals, but not since renewals have started. So I think I really appreciate you guys talking about that in June so that we could direct pharmacists to that communication. So that's been great. The things that I get calls about are just the garden variety, forgot username, forgot password, forgot security questions. And I work with people on a one-on-one basis to make sure that that we get them what they need in order to be able to log in. But the things that we've put in place have significantly reduced the number of calls that I've gotten. So all in all, a really great start to the renewal season for 2021. I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all have.
The reason these processes keep getting better is because Missy has an uncanny ability to see around corners and figure out what we need to fix going into things. But she and her staff and Antoine working with the ThoughtSpan people, I do want y'all to know how much time and effort Missy and her and thinking about process improvements on this and making things as easy and smooth as they can be. And the proof is in the pudding so far during this renewal season.
Jay and
Yeah,
Missy.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sorry, Missy. I wanted to ask one question just to clarify and make sure that this is represented on the frequently asked questions. And maybe I just couldn't find it when I looked the other day, but I know that our CEs for immunizations is 1.5 a year. Is that correct, Missy?
Right.
And then I knew the new federal guideline says something different. And so my concern is I just don't want pharmacists not to have that just in case as we move into this COVID vaccine. So I wasn't sure. I know it's on the board somewhere. I'm just not sure if it's connecting there somewhere.
And I can work on that. So yes, the answer, Ashley, is under North Carolina rules. An immunizing pharmacist must get 3 hours of immunization related CE, which is a fairly broad category because it includes CE on, about a disease state that you're immunizing for example. It's not necessarily just, how to administer a vaccine over and over, but it's 3 hours every 2 years. You're not required to split it up on a per year basis. So you're right about that. The federal requirement is 4 hours every 2 years. So there is an hour difference on that. It is Ashley in that guidance document for the PrEP Act stuff that compares, but if you had trouble finding it, others have as well. I'll get that. I'll tease that out and get that up as a separate thing.
Yeah, I appreciate that because sometimes I think people need to connect those two, that they need that additional half hour just to be on the safe side so that we can continue doing what we're doing on the vaccine.
And recall, Ashley, that's one of the reasons that you guys have decided to fund the COVID vaccination CE, because that's going to be a 2-hour CE available to every pharmacist and technician in the state on that. So you guys are really literally put your money where your mouth is to help pharmacists out with this. And so, yeah, I will get that teased out and featured. Ashley, it's a great suggestion.
Okay. Thank you, Jay, for doing that. And thank you, Missy, for all your hard work.
Of course.
All righty. Anything else for Missy? Thank you, MB.
Thank you.
Next item, members, is another update on the FDA MOU. I won't repeat, much to your relief, I'm sure, all the discussions we've had, but I keep a running summary in your materials. But the two things to update you on with respect to the FDA MOU. Number one, the clock, the 1-year clock has begun. So on October 27th, the FDA published in Federal Register its final MOU, which means it is now available to the states to be signed. And as you all know, FDA has announced that it will not begin enforcing the 5% interstate distribution rule for compounded products in states, in non-signatory states, until 1 year is passed, giving states plenty of time to consider the MOU and decide whether to sign on. So by their statement, October 27th, 2021 will be when FDA begins to enforce that 5% rule in the DQSA. And of course, you all know that the terms of the MOU are that establishes 50% of compounded drug product going interstate, 50% or above from a pharmacy, as being an inordinate amount. But even that is not a penalty. A pharmacy can ship 100%. If you're a signatory state, pharmacies in your state can ship 100% of their compounded product interstate. The only thing the going above 50% does is trigger a requirement for the state to report certain information to the FDA, but we've discussed that. So the clock is now ticking, but we've got plenty of ticks to go before we have to make a decision. Second, NABP is continuing to ramp up pretty quickly here. Its compounding data collection and reporting program. I have included in your materials a memo that Al Carter sent around on that, and I continue to be plugged in to that. And as we've discussed before, now that all of the pharmacies in North Carolina have e-profile numbers, our signing on to that, which would satisfy our data collection and reporting obligations under the MOU, should be relatively easy to do. But that's easy to say. They got to actually pull the trigger and see how this thing works. But that continues to move apace. So those are the updates. I think that there are two things for us to be thinking about in terms of going forward. One is, as mentioned last month or month before last, if the decision of our board is to sign on to the MOU, we're going to need to, in my view, promulgate a rule that would require compounding pharmacies in North Carolina to report the compounding data that's required under the MOU through the NABP system. I think Clint has, if I'm recalling correctly, Clint's run down the deadlines on that, and we would need to, if the choice of the board is to sign on to the MOU, we would need to start that rulemaking no later, I think, than May, I think is right.
May
Clint,
is my recollection.
to be able to get that done before FDA's October 27th, 2021 deadline. So we got plenty of time on that. And then the second thing to think about is I need some direction from you guys. Now that we know that the MOU is final and the clock is ticking, what's your view? What are your views on us sort of publishing the MOU Obviously, it's not a rulemaking, right? We're not doing any sort of rulemaking, but what are your feelings about publishing the MOU on the website and certainly inviting any of the folks we regulate that if they have things that they would like the board to consider as it makes its decision about whether to sign on to the MOU, that they would have an opportunity to do that. And what I've got in mind, if you think it's the right thing to do, is to publish the MOU, have a prefatory statement about that, and then we just create a specific email address that folks could send comments on. Now, what we might get, but wouldn't be helpful, is to the extent folks want to argue, well, the terms of the MOU should be different. That's not what this would be about. I think what we would be most helpful to us is whether folks think that we should enter into it as it is, whether that would be good for North Carolina pharmacy or not good for North Carolina pharmacy, and why. So I need your guidance on that, and Clint may have thoughts on that as well.
I think doing that, Jay, is a good idea. My assumption is that compounders in North Carolina would want us to have signed it.
That's my bet as well.
Or anybody that this affects, which really is only compounders, but my assumption may be wrong, but anyway, I think it's certainly worth soliciting input.
I do think if you do it, while it's not a notice and comment type proceeding, there are some, requirements to take those things into account and at least recognize that you've heard them. And so the only thing I would say is be prepared if you ask for comments and you get 1,000 comments to at least have to think about them in categories.
Right. And Clint, if it's the will of the board that we do this, I'd like for you and I can round up to figure out how to do a notice of this that looks rule-ish, even though it's not.
I think I'd rather it not look rule-ish.
Fair enough.
Something. If you want to say something, let us know.
Fair enough, but we can work. And while you're mulling too, and I'm perhaps getting a little bit ahead. My thought is, maybe look to get this, if you think it's the right thing to do, maybe get it up around December 1st to invite comment and leave comments open to like February 1st, thereabouts, give folks a couple of months to think about it and provide the comments. And then that would give me time once that February 1st deadline came and went, that I would be, per what Clint was just saying, I'd have time prior to our February meeting, whether that's a virtual retreat or a regular meeting, to have compiled those things and sort of sorted them by category to present to you.
So Jay, do we need to vote on that?
I don't think you need to. It wouldn't hurt to, if you want to just vote to, if it were the will of the board, make a motion to publish the FDA MOU on the board's website and invite public comment on whether the board should enter into this agreement or not, and leave that comment period open for 60 days.
I'll make that motion as stated.
All right. Got a motion from Bill. Is there a second? I think Michelle is seconding that, but she's on mute. So all in favor say aye. Keith?
Aye.
Wallace?
Aye.
Andy?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. All
Very
right.
good. I'll get it done. I'll have it up by December 1st and probably before that.
I can't imagine there's more than a half a dozen pharmacies in the state that would even have this hit their radar.
Yeah, you're probably right, but I agree with you, Bill. Good to hear. I'm with you. I share the intuition that the pharmacies that are likely to be impacted, which is probably going to be relatively few, but that are likely to be impacted, I assume they'd want us to sign on too. But I'm with you. It'd be nice to get some.
At least we can say we asked.
That's right. Absolutely right. Great, y'all. Well, I will turn, actually, if you're good with it, I'll turn to a rulemaking update, which will be very, very brief. Just a reminder that the permanent COVID-19 drug preservation rulemaking is underway, and that the nursing and medical boards have that underway as well. The public hearing, as you know, is scheduled for December 16th. 2020 at 10 a.m. and all the information about that is on the website. And recall, Michelle, you're probably the only one who's never been a part of a public hearing on a rulemaking outside of a board meeting context. It really is just purely a passive receiving kind of thing. It's just to hear what folks say and take that in. So y'all are all welcome, of course, to join into that. But if you have a conflict, it's okay. Staff will summarize any of the comments that come up, but you're certainly welcome to be on that. And Clint, it's going to slip my mind again. We need to schedule a meeting sometime very shortly thereafter, right, to consider those comments and take action. You're muted. You're muted, Clint.
I can't remember if January is past time or right within the time, but given the possibility for winter storms and disruptions and who knows what else, the safer course of action is to schedule a special meeting to do.
So staff will work with y'all to send out some dates between December 16th and before Christmas to get together for a short meeting to consider the comments on that rule. So that's moving apace. The limited service pharmacy permits potential rulemaking change, and I updated you all on this last week. Chase and Crystal are continuing to really sift the data on that. So Wallace and Bill, I think I've told you guys, we're not holding out on you. We want to get every piece of data on every limited service permit we need so that we can present to y'all a complete picture. And this strikes me as the kind of thing that probably the February meeting, whatever its format is going to be, would probably be the right time to really discuss that. So Crystal and Chase are finishing up the data piece on that. So Wallace and Bill, sometime between now and mid-January at the latest, we'll be ready to meet with you guys and really drill down into what we found and come up with some hard proposals if that works for you guys. Wallace is giving the thumbs up. Thank y'all for that. And that's it on rulemaking right now. Ashley, I can
Well, see, the limited service permit, you said that Chase is still working on all that good stuff, and that might be something that we could table for the virtual retreat.
Yeah, absolutely. And that would give plenty of time to finalize that data and meet with Bill and Wallace, who you've designated as to review and think through the data and recommend specifics to the full board.
Okay.
So I think that brings us, unless there are any more questions on that, they'll bring us to financials. So I know JP is lurking out there someplace to do that.
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks.
Yeah, man.
Hey, I'll make this quick. Not much to report. So into the first.
That's always good. That's always a good thing.
So end of October, not much to report. Obviously, renewals hit in November, but up to October, we just see a continuation of what we have witnessed the first few months of the year. Due to the pandemic, a lot of operating activities have been restricted. So our operating expenses on the whole have been way under budget. Hopefully that will change as the year progresses. And then on the revenue side of things, we conservatively budgeted for a downtick in most revenues. Obviously, we'll have a better picture of that starting in November. But as of October, we've seen some pleasant surprises as pharmacy permits and technician registrations slightly up than what we had budgeted for. Again, we continue to see some miscellaneous income from mailing lists as well. And that is primarily it. So we're in a favorable position. As always, the board always is in a favorable position due to our conservative budgeting practices and our conservative investment policy as well. And I don't really have much else beyond that. I'm happy to delve into the weeds as always and get all the minutia if anybody wants it. But otherwise, I will spare you all the boredom of adding up digits.
Thanks, JP. Anybody got any questions for JP? All right, brother.
Well, thank you all.
Thanks as always, JP.
Thanks.
It's nice to see you once a week.
Yeah, likewise. Hopefully I'll see you tomorrow morning and I can leave some more checks for you. It's about the most social interaction I get during the week, so it's pretty great.
That's a sad comment on both of our lives, but
It really
appreciate
is.
it nonetheless. All right, thanks, JP. I'll hand it over now to Crystal. I think, Crystal, you're up this month to do the investigative statistics.
Yes, I am.
All righty.
How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good.
All right. So far, we are at 294 cases, which is a lot lower than what we had last year. I think a lot of that is due to COVID. We have 73 AOC cases, 25 diversion cases, 52 error cases, 7 incident reports, 47 inspection follow-ups, 3 others, and 81 legal and procedural cases. Suspension or surrenders, are 26 with 19 technicians, 1 clinical pharmacist practitioner, 1 DME, 1 nurse practitioner, and 4 pharmacists. Any questions that you guys have? Quick and simple this morning or afternoon.
Thank you, Crystal.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, KB. All right, well, moving right along, the election is underway and Kristen is doing her usual terrific work on that. Kristen, any updates you want to give on that?
I would be glad to. So as you all know, voting began on November 1st, and I'm very happy to report everything is going smoothly. Hopefully some of you have voted. If you haven't, I hope you will. As of this morning, we have 752 votes. I did look to see where that was compared to this time last year, and it's very, very similar. I think we had 800 at this time last year, so very close. Certainly would like it to be higher, but we got a ways to go. So just to let you know, we're going to do what we did last year, which is we had and voters ask along the way how many votes we were getting. So we decided last year, and we'll continue that this year if it's okay with everyone, to send out an update every month at the beginning of every month, just saying, hey, please vote if you haven't. You can vote and renew in different login sessions, and we will also give the total number of votes as of that time. That's really all I had to share, but would be glad to answer questions.
Kristen, if we lay that over top of renewal based on what we got earlier, how does that look from a voter turnout perspective?
So we can certainly run the numbers after all is said and done. I think if I pull up what Missy showed, Missy, jump in if I'm wrong here, what do we have, about 3,000 pharmacists who have renewed?
Yeah, sounds
yes,
right.
at about 8:30 a.m. we had about 3,835. So I'd probably say about 4,000 pharmacists.
Yeah, so with 752 votes, not as many as we'd like, but like I said, it's same as last year. So, and as you know, last year's numbers were certainly not the highest voter turnout, but better than the previous 2 years. So,
and we were
so we're
hoping
in that 20 to 25.
Less than a third.
Yeah, that's more like 20%. And we were hoping this change would increase voter participation.
Although all those 4,000 may not be eligible to vote if they don't live in North Carolina.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
That's a good point, Clint.
And it's never too late to vote. for folks. They can still go back in and vote after they've renewed their license. So maybe they're just taking some time to renew the candidates. So hopefully that's the case.
Vote early, vote often. That's my motto.
That's how we did it in West Virginia.
Oh, Lord.
This is going to go badly. We need
If I see one of you people standing in front of Four Corners Total Landscaping, Four Seasons Total Landscaping, I'm denying all knowledge on that. Kristen, thank you. Maybe we'll stop this before it runs completely off the rails.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thanks, Kristen. So next thing on for consideration from you guys. So Bill brought this up at the last meeting. It by and large, it seems like the team's format for having this meeting, y'all are getting very comfortable with it. It works pretty well. The occasional technical glitch notwithstanding. Given that it's working pretty well, what's your appetite for perhaps turning the February meeting into a retreat that we would do in this format instead of live? So just throwing it out there and see what y'all think, whether that's something you're interested in.
Jay, personally, I think it's a great idea because I think there's several things that we've talked about today that would need further discussion. So I think that's a perfect opportunity to do that personally.
How are you going to handle catering?
Drone delivery to each of your.
Okay.
I love you, Andy. I love you.
Now, Andy, that's generally a Bill question. So
We're gonna. I will send each of you a Jimmy John's gift card that you can use at the appropriate time during the retreat.
Can we all go to the retreat in whatever background Keith is in?
Sure. I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, as long as you put a sun lamp over your desk.
Got to get that vitamin D somehow.
I think a virtual retreat is better than no retreat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
And I don't think, guys, that notwithstanding the good news that's coming out about a vaccine, I mean, the sheer the rollout of this, we're not going to be, I think, likely to be in a position to be meeting live for quite some time yet. And so I think virtual is our option, at least in the shortish term.
I would like to say if I ever get to be president in a real board meeting, I'm going to have to be reminded not to call everyone's name as we vote. So
no, I'm never going to remind
that
you of
happening, but I will need that reminder from
No, that's just going to be the new process from now on. You got to call the roll, answer individually on the record.
You're just seeking so much accountability, individual accountability.
That's right.
Actually, when I was on that FDA advisory committee for compounding, people had to say how they voted, and they had to say why they voted that way.
Oh, wow.
I have them sound mind and body and make this duly
with liberty and fraternity for all. Amen. All right. Well, so it sounds like everybody's interested in that. Staff side, we'll start working on that. What I would ask you guys to do is to, since we are going to have a February retreat, is obviously I've got a lot of things that we've talked about that lend themselves more to a retreat discussion. There are some staff specific things that we'd like to discuss that really relate to internal operations things. But if you would send me your ideas or your things that even if, and don't assume that it's on a list that I or anybody else have, just shoot them to me and we'll make sure that we cover everything. And we'll start working here on the staff side to compile those and get everything teed up and any background information that we might need to have as a supplement for those. So
Should we
your,
include everybody on that email, all the board members, I mean, or just send them to you individually?
I tell you, if you want to, just to avoid us getting into a situation where it could accidentally break into discussion of a board item through email, just send them to me. And what I'll do is I will periodically consolidate all those and send them out to you guys to take a look at and say, here's where we are. Does that work? All right. Will do then. Very good. And look,
would be.
Thank you guys again for, you know, I guess leaning in is the phrase that everybody wants to use, but leaning into the virtual technology, and none of this would work without y'all's commitment to do it. So thanks for that. It's certainly making staff's life easier that you guys are as embracing as you have been. So really, thank you for that. And one of these days, we're going to buy Wallace a bigger squirrel to put on the treadmill that operates his ISP out at his house. All right, Ashley, the next thing we've got is we have the PHC and meeting schedule has been is reproduced for you all. I mean, it's all pretty pro forma, right? We know which months we meet. We rotate everybody through on the PHCs.
Jay.
Yep.
We've lost Wallace again. Do we need to wait till he's back?
Yeah. Why don't we wait for a second, see what happened? The squirrel died. He needs to upgrade to a raccoon, I think. They have a little more horsepower on the treadmill.
He needs a fox.
We need Antoine in a van outside of his house.
That'd be funny as hell when they had a big van party with a gigantic dish on top of it. Yeah.
Oh, you guys should be
wearing
ashamed
reflective
of
shades. Yeah, we'll give it a second. I'll text him to make sure.
He just texted me, Jay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he's working.
It looked like Wallace was asleep, and
Yeah.
then his screen went off.
I thought he was sitting kind of still there for a second.
It's a Zen thing. Channeling his chi.
He's trying out a new challenge, I guess.
Jay, just a general comment, I'm sitting here looking at the schedule and thinking back in my mind about how often or not often that I've done PHCs. It at first glance, it doesn't look like we're doing this from a standpoint of, and I'm not jonesing to do PHCs.
No, I understand.
I feel like that I'm only doing it once a year. And
well, right, it turns on what our docket is, right? And you know, back in the early days of monthly PHCs, we always had a bunch of cases because our docket was so jammed up. But these days, it just really turns on what do we have? Do we have cases that are teed up and ready to go? So you're right, Andy. Everybody gets assigned for a month, but probably it's more like every other month that we actually have PHCs. I think Clint's dying to get in on this.
Well, I'm not dying to, but I think, you know, during the plague, the investigators have been investigating what they need to investigate, but it's naturally going slower than usual. And at the end of the pipeline, we're making the decisions, you know, do we have things that really need to be dealt with at PHC, or can a letter of warning do it? And so the whole pipeline is sort of slowed down. But even before that, we were at a point where, you know, we try to gather them up so there'd be a couple a month to make it worthwhile to come. And so we would have them probably 6 months a year, even then. And Wallace is back.
Yeah, I'm back. I don't know what it is. I hit to unmute my mic. It's happened twice, and I get kicked to this blue screen, and it just reboots everything. I've sent Antoine the last thing I got, and we'll, with his intimate knowledge, I'm definitely confident he'll get it all figured out.
All right. So Wallace, we've got the schedule up, and as always, we recognize that any individual month y'all might need to switch, and that's always fine. It's always easy to work that out.
Jay, I see something on the second page that says June 2021 through December 2021. And so the dates go June, July, then it goes back to January. So I'm wondering if that is that making a little bit off there?
There's a goof there. I apologize for that. Yeah, it's a cut and paste error. That's all.
Okay. So that won't change.
Yeah, because if you look, if you scroll back up, and I thank you for catching that, Ashley. If you scroll back up to the previous page, you'll see those same dates, and Andy as the PhD. They just got cut and pasted twice.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
That might be why I thought I was only doing it once a year. Yeah, thanks for that, Ashley.
I just make a comment too, Jay, that sometimes if there's any kind of hospital type specific issues that, whether it makes any difference, I'll just throw it out there. I know they used to kick some of that stuff my way.
Part of what we think about, Wallace, absolutely, as we have PHCs, is if there is a board member with a specific expertise in a particular area, we very often will try to match the PHC schedule up for that particular board member. So thank you for that. We absolutely do continue to do that.
However, it does increase the opportunity for a conflict of interest.
Mm-hmm. So we're sensitive to that, but you guys are super great.
Thanks.
You are.
And Wallace, one thing that we do that we didn't do the last time you were on is we typically will send all of the PHC notices on the Friday before, so that you have a chance to say, no, I know this person, or they're my competitor, or whatever, or don't do this. So we are more aggressive about seeking out opportunities to identify conflicts than we used to be.
I'm good with that.
Yep. All right. I guess could we go ahead and have a motion to approve the meeting and PHC schedule with the correction that Ashley noted in that schedule?
So moved. It's Keith.
Is there a second there?
Second, this is Andy. Second.
All right. So all in favor, let's see, Bill. Keith.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Andy.
Yes, ma'am.
Michelle.
Aye.
And Wallace. I think he said aye. I see his hand going up, and I vote as well. So looks like it's good to go.
Great. Thank you all. I don't think there is actually anything on the consent agenda, so I don't think there's any need to approve anything. So with that, then that would leave. We do not have any potential summary suspensions for the meeting today. So if it is the will of the board, it would be a motion to go into closed session to debate on the GPS Pharmacy Solutions Tech Ratio request and the Kaufman reciprocity related request.
So Jay, may I just verify that responsibilities for board members in December, if we want to on December the 16th at 10 a.m., that will be room for discussion about the MOUs. And then also on December 17th at 2 o'clock, we have the responsibility of the final rulemaking for the drugs related to COVID, right?
No, let me, you might have gotten it right, but I may have blanked out. So two things need to happen in December. One is on the 16th at 10 a.m. will be that public hearing on the COVID drug preservation rule, which you are welcome to attend or not as you see fit. What we will need to do is schedule a short meeting between December 17th and let's say the 23rd. I don't think we want to do it on Christmas Eve or Christmas, to review the comments, if there are any, on the COVID drug preservation rule and make a decision whether to adopt that rule or not. And so or more likely Leslie will get in touch with you guys after this meeting to set up a date for that.
I already have a thing in my calendar for December 17 at 2 p.m.
Yeah.
Okay, well then that's good. Then I guess we've got that settled. We'll send out a reminder on that.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I had my dates right with that and that we were all on the same page for December stuff. So
Ashley, if there's ever a conflict between what you have on your calendar and what I have on mine, you can be sure that you will be right 100% of the time. I'm not kidding.
you haven't seen my schedule. It's crazy.
If people here will tell you, I have many neurological deficits, but one of them is trouble reading and following calendars. So it's a delight to Amy, I assure you. All right, so December 7th at 2 p.m. So we'll get, but Ashley, I will get as a follow-up after today, I'll send all that back out so everybody's got that on there.
That sounds great. So I guess unless there's any other discussion or comments, we need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
All right, we got Andy and Michelle is seconding that. So all in favor, Bill?
Aye.
Keith? He's on mute, so.
He's on mute and he's hidden.
He's coming back.
I'm back.
He's
All
back.
right.
So are you good with
I
moving into
totally
closed
missed it.
session?
I'm sorry.
You good with going into closed session, Keith?
I am great with going into closed session.
All right. Andy?
Yes, I would like to go into closed session. Thank you.
Wallace?
Aye.
And Michelle? I think you said aye. And I am as well. So we are
Very good.
going
Well,
into
let's
closed session.
Let's pause for a minute while Antoine clears the board. And for those of you who attended, thank you.